Welcome, everyone. This is a place for the leading voices across the industry to gather to talk news, titles, and everything indie. I'm your master of ceremonies, Jill Grote, the Indie Informer. And in this episode, one more member of the Indie Council steps into the light. So joining the council today, Pen and Pixels creator that you can spot in the wild on MinMax and Kind of Funny, Janet Garcia. Hello, Janet.
Hello.
You're looking lovely. I am enjoying this orange color.
The thing is, and for the audio listeners, it's like a little dress with like fluffy sleeves. A lot of times when I look really nice, it's because I didn't want to have to think about what I had to wear, so I just put on a dress because it's one thought instead of two
Yeah,
thoughts. Which I love
100%.
that because people will be like, "Oh wow, you look so nice," and I'm like, "I had nothing left in my closet. I have not done laundry since I got back." But thank you.
I feel it. And then one half of the hosting duo for Lukewarm Games podcast that I had the pleasure of meeting for the first time at PAX, Luke Lewis. Hello, Luke. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
No problem. Did you? Oh, well, I can't ask you that because we're going to talk about PAX later.
For
Spoilers for
sure.
everybody about what the topic might
It's
be
good
today.
foreshadowing.
Yeah, but Luke is one of the people whose names I actually remembered. I am notoriously terrible for remembering
Same.
names and faces. I can remember usually one or the other, but I happily didn't get to embarrass myself in front of you, so that's nice. And
All good.
before
It was awesome to meet you in person.
we get started, Luke, anybody who's joining the council for the first time, I've decided to make it a tradition.
I like this
Gets to
tradition.
yeah, this is fun. Gets to do a little would you rather game. And this
Sure.
time the would you rather is going to be PAX West edition.
Love
So
it.
I've got 3 questions for you. Are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
Okay. Would you rather fight the protagonist from your favorite indie at PAX West 2022 or 2023?
Trying to remember what I named my game of the show last PAX, but either way, I'm not a fighter. I'm a podcaster. Like I'm out here just trying to make positive vibes. But
Would you make a better podcast than the protagonists? Like if you had to podcast off against like video game characters, who do you think you could beat? Who would you take?
I'm thinking about one of my favorite indies from this past show, which I'm sure we'll talk about later in this episode, but Clam Man. Interesting guy, has a lot to say, lots of character. I think he would be a fun podcast off, I will say.
Okay. He seems like he would be a tough competition.
Like
so
a
you're
unique
not someone
character. Yeah,
so you're
I'm
not
up for the
shying away.
challenge. Yeah.
Okay. We're learning something about you here.
Okay.
Meanwhile, I'm
Love
like
it.
tabbing over. I'm like, Googling who is Clam Man?
You're gonna learn all
Janet.
about Clam Man.
Yeah,
This was
you
a
are.
Mike Towndrow game recommendation that I had to check out on the floor.
Did you
And
really?
there's yeah,
Oh,
he
that's cool. I got a
so
direct from the developer, so I didn't know Mike was into that.
I had
Oh,
never
let's
heard
share
of
it.
Clam Man 1, so when I heard Clam Man 2, I was like, that doesn't sound like a real game. No offense
Right.
to the developer. I was just like, that sounds like words put
I
together.
definitely
And
looked
then
it up.
yeah, and then I played it and I adored it, so we'll chat more about that soon.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking at first it was going to be a goat simulator situation where you're
Right,
just
where
like,
it's like
yeah, this is definitely the sequel, but we're just calling
right.
it 3 because we promised there wouldn't be a sequel. Anyway, you're very cleverly putting off the difficult questions, and I appreciate the antics, but we're going to number 2.
Okay. I thought you were going to say like, but who are you fighting?
Yeah.
Sorry, anyway, to derail.
Sword
Question
in
number
hand.
2. Let's do
Question
it.
number 2. Would you rather have the ability to teleport directly to every indie station throughout PAX, or the ability to fly in the convention centers throughout PAX? So,
Flying's pretty cool, but based on this past PAX West having separate buildings that you had to like truck to and from, I'm going to go with teleport just for the sake of logistical reasons.
right. Because I think one of the biggest things for me was like my feet were falling off by the end. So I'm trying to decide whether or not it would be helpful on my feet to like be able to just droop, or that I could like barely hover around over the ground. So like you're not putting, I don't know. Okay, but teleporting. So you're a pragmatic, practical kind of person.
I think so. That feels
Okay.
right.
Okay. Number 3, and this one has a little bit of setup.
Okay.
So let's just say that you're guaranteed to play every indie at PAX. You have
Impossible, but
no
okay. Love
waiting
it.
in line, and you get to do this over all 4 days. Okay,
Okay.
keep that in mind. So with those set up, would you rather have to stand at every station during the show or have everyone behind you waiting in line loudly critiquing your performance?
I think I would stand. I get
Yeah.
really stressed out with people watching me. Even devs who are like watching me, they'll be like, "Oh, you needed to jump there," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's a platform. I'm sorry. I'm
We were
trying.
talking about
We're
that a
talking
lot
and
for
playing. Yeah, it's a
for the
I
struggle."
show.
apologize. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I'm still feeling it. Like I'm getting older and I don't know if I can do this convention thing because like every part of my lower body is just falling apart at this point. So I I would probably have to go like oh whatever like after the first day I would
hmm
probably be like can I switch cuz
That is
Do
I'm
we
gonna
have
wild.
like?
die.
What
Is
shoes did
there
you have
no
on? Because I think your shoes did you dirty during this convention.
No,
Like,
I have like squishy shoes. Like the last
squishy
day
shoes?
I
I
have
love
squishy
it.
shoes. I have shoes specifically for walking, but like
Okay.
what's
that
the brand?
last
Is it like a
day,
running shoe kind of thing?
no, it's not. Because I have to worry about fashion,
I
damn
feel
it.
like
It's important.
you have to what?
I have to worry about fashion. It's so important.
No, that's fair. I feel like we can find you a shoe where you don't have to get harassed by everyone in line to because
Okay.
I feel you, like, the degree to which you're like, "Dude, this thing tore me up." Um, but I feel like it's gotta be a shoe thing, I think, especially if it's feet specifically. Because my, like, shins hurt from walking the hills, like, it's a very
Mm,
vertical city, but no way. If you're in so much pain that you're willing to take that level of criticism, I will happily suggest a new pair of shoes because there's no way.
okay.
I had a
So,
follow-up though. Do you have like noise canceling headphones or are you playing
Mm.
over speakers? Because like if you're like isolating yourself, maybe I could see it, but that's a
no,
lot of
you'd have to
people
hear it.
criticizing a lot of
Yeah.
games,
Cuz
a
like
lot
Also, a
of
lot of places you
days.
have to stand already. Like, it's kinda yeah, that's
True,
pretty
true.
my
standard, unfortunately,
my
for
last
demos.
day I was like dragging myself everywhere because literally almost every single appointment was standing only, like no chairs, no nothing. I'm like, I'm gonna die. Yeah. Okay. So I think that tells us a lot about you, Luke, but we want to hear a little bit more about lukewarm games. So
Sure.
go ahead and give us the spiel.
Sure. So the elevator pitch, Lukewarm Games is an independent media outlet that I started with my now fiance Claire, a little over 3 years ago
Congratulations.
now. Yeah, I appreciate that. It was during the pandemic and I was between jobs, and breaking into the games industry in any sort of way was always something that I wanted to do. I wanted to start a podcast. I wanted to create content and talk about games. So my lovely partner was like, let's do it. I will be your co-host. We will do this together. And so we sat down at our dining room table and we chatted for 3 hours about The Last of Us Part 2, which had just come out at that time. And
Hmm.
the rest is kind of history. From there, we kept podcasting, we made network connections, collaborated with friends, and kind of just kept going and going until we were able to start covering media events like PAX West. And I hosted a panel at PAX East earlier this year and things like that. So, trying to make a meaningful impact in the games industry, stay positive, meet wonderful people like the two of you, and uplift cool video games. I think predominantly we focus on indie coverage with a sprinkling of AAA games in there, but that's kind of our shtick. We do a little bit of everything, reviews and previews to more in-depth developer interviews, or something we've been really pushing recently. So yeah,
Right.
that's Lukewarm Games in a nutshell.
I love it. And we'll talk more about where you can check that out and everything.
Of
But
course.
we are going to jump into some indie news. Of course, because there's a show going on and everybody's super busy, there's a ton of news to talk about. And our lovely guest Luke, you can choose to be as opinionated or not as you feel during this section.
I'm sure I'll have some takes.
Okay, we're ready. If you want to throw out a bad take, I'm ready for that too.
What? Well, I like how that's where your head goes first. You're like, just
When someone says they have a take, I
I
was
like
like,
to think I have mostly net positive takes, but
yeah, positive takes. Yeah.
you can tell me how it goes. We'll see where we
okay,
end up.
we will
What was your
be
last bad take, really quick,
My last bad take.
or at least like where you're like, you know what? I don't know about this take, because mine was the liking the ship customization in Kingdom Hearts 1 more than Starfield's.
Oh,
To be,
I did
I
like that.
feel
I'm
like
like, I don't think that's a good take, but it is. I feel like it might be true for
sure.
me.
I feel like most recently I didn't love Final Fantasy 16, and I feel like a lot of people did.
I'm
Yeah.
I don't know
gonna
if that's a bad take. I feel like, to each their own kind of, but I feel like that's the most recent thing I got like shit for on the internet, if you will.
Sure, sure.
I'll give you that it's a bad take because we need an indie take, Luke.
Okay,
True.
fair. I'm sorry. Wrong
I really
podcast.
started it here. My worst
uh,
indie take. I'm sure there's like a hot indie that I didn't love, but
I feel like my hottest take right now is nothing should happen around PAX because I'm trying so hard to cover some things.
oh yeah.
But hopefully you'll get my opinion soon.
For
Speaking
sure.
of things that might be coming soon or not, we don't really have a release date. Janet, Tinykin's team is talking about their next game already. Tell me about it.
Yeah. I was really I mean, it's funny to say I'm surprised to hear this. Obviously, creators are working on a million things behind the scenes, prototyping stuff, but I think to me with Tinykin having dropped was it just last year they dropped that game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. Um, and that coming out and it being that Pikmin like game, and then this year being, Pikmin coming out, and those that kind of reminding people about like, oh yeah, did you play Tinykin? Like I felt those conversations sort of resurfaced. So for them to they took to Twitter and said, with the Tinykin team, we've been working for a few months on a new project called Rendezvous. It's a rendezvous, but they separate it. So they spell it RENDES, rondes, and then dash Voos, and they put an emoji of a cup of coffee and a cake. And it says, here's a sneak peek. Then it's a squirrel emoji and the eyes emoji. And the images, it is kind of in that, it's somewhat in the art style of Tinykin. Doesn't seem as flat as Tinykin's kind of like a almost Paper Mario-esque with like when you move, you sort of flip as you go. But it has a similar kind of look to it. And it looks like there's like a mouse coming into with, and there's like a squirrel at the desk, and there's rock people at a table. This is my favorite part of this job, by the way, just describing what this is here. So
I mean,
they're
I'm
not
looking
really.
at this picture, Janet, and you are 100% nailing
Thank
everything
you.
that's happening.
And it
There's
kind of
also like there's a
go for it.
sentient piece of wood or a log over here as
Yeah.
well. I don't know what he's up to.
There's also the angle and perspective is almost isometric, but kind of diorama-esque. So it almost implies that if you were to enter an area, that you might get a quick diorama view of maybe a certain setting. Again, that's a little bit of speculation on what the image they tossed out there is. Obviously people in the replies were kind of like, oh, so is it an isometric platform RPG? And they're kind of like, that's a great question. Who knows? They're definitely being, this was their tease, and that's kind of it for now. They said it's a prototype for the moment. That's what they've said in the replies. But I have to imagine that this is very likely what their next game will generally look like, just in the sense that, again, people are prototyping stuff all the time behind the scenes, but to be at a point where you decide to share it, and it's not just oh, by the way, here's what we were working on before, it kind of does seem like, all right, this is probably, yes, they're prototyping it, but I would imagine that they are carrying that prototype all the way to, a final build. But yeah.
I'm super excited by the fact that I've just looked at like the cafe cases where you would normally have pastries and things. The pastries in this one are little pieces of log. They're wood pieces because it's being run by a squirrel. So of course it's
You're
got
right.
little log
Honestly,
pieces.
we could do like I mean, we'll probably wrap it up in a second, but we could do like a deep dive on just what's
Just like
going
what
on
we
here.
see. 'Cause
Yeah.
they're
And the restaurant of what we're looking at, a little cafe, it's Les Rendezvous. So it's like a French squirrels cafe, and they have a cat, but the cat looks like it also might be kind of a squirrel cat.
Yes. And
That's
it's
Love
a
it.
very much Pluto Goofy situation where they're both
Yeah.
the same
Mhm.
animal, but one's definitely an animal and one's definitely like a human.
Yeah, like the anthropomorphize side.
Right.
Made
And
to be
this,
anthropomorphic. Yes.
I don't know what this mouse is up to. This mouse looks like
Stressed.
they're trying to lie through a situation, like maybe pretend to be one of these rocks right here.
Yeah.
I will put the link in the description below so everyone can see the picture that we are deep diving into because we got a lot deeper on that than I was expecting, but I love it.
Yeah, I'm excited for whatever. I mean, I really like Tinykin, so I'm kind of like down for whatever they're doing. I am a big fan of like the cozy cafe thing. I think
Mhm.
again, this is very conspiracy theory at this point, putting on the tinfoil hat a bit, but you have to imagine that it's so interesting because it could cut either way. They either showed us a screenshot that is very much sort of nodding to the core of the game, or it could just be a totally random innocuous area that they happen to have designed. I don't know which direction they went in for it.
Sure.
I'm like, "Oh, is it a cozy, like, management?" They're probably like, "Oh, this is just, like, a random place you can walk into for, like, one singular
Right.
item and then leave." I don't know, but
Sure.
we'll see.
That would be hilarious.
Borrowing your
Uh,
tinfoil hat for a second, Janet, when I
Ooh,
saw this, I had the speculation that maybe this is like a shopkeeping moonlighter-esque
that's the thing,
game
yeah.
yeah.
because of this, like, the shop setup, but either way, I'm down. Tinykin was great, so I'll play whatever this team is cooking up.
Yeah. And I'm going to circle back to the idea of this game in a second. But
Sure.
moving on to just today announced Day of the Devs, the Game Awards edition is coming in December. They're going to have a showcase December 6th and an in-person event December the 8th in LA. So if you're, I don't know why I said LA like that. Like technically it is two different letters, but you don't say. I
Separate them as much.
apologize
It's
for
all good.
that being very weird.
I forgive
Um,
you on behalf of Los Angeles, so.
Thank you. So yeah, if you're in LA around December the 8th, definitely go check this out. This is a must watch show for anyone who's interested in indies. They have huge things that pop up. You've got like past shows have had things like Cocoon and let me see what other things do I have highlighted here. Um Sea of Stars was one, Gunbrella was another. So you've got all of these huge things, which, speaking of Tinykin's reveal, I am very excited to see what games might show up here because so many of the games we're hyped for this year will be out by December the 6th. So typically they highlight games that are not out yet. We have some things from maybe Devolver that got pushed into 2024. Those could show up. We have some things that got announced like Revenant Hill that we don't really have a thing for, but I would be interested to see if Tinykin's kind of reveal corresponds to
Mm.
trying to get people interested so that they show up here. Like I don't know anything. Don't go out there and quote me on it, but I would love to see that game here. Do you have anything either of you that you'd like to see at this showcase?
Um,
Everybody's thinking
I
Nothing.
very
Yeah,
know.
I'm trying to think of a like the
What's not
timing
out
I
that
feel
they're
like
waiting
is key.
for?
Yeah, of like what don't we have a date for? Maybe
nobody
Plucky
say that.
Squire?
Okay, Plucky Squire
Plucky
is a good
Squire
one.
date
Yeah.
maybe would make sense here for like early next year. That's
No one can say the two things. Mike isn't
okay.
here, so he knows like
The
we're
one
not
of
going
them,
to touch
yeah.
that one that he likes to talk about. Everybody knows the other one that we don't talk about on the show.
I actually don't know what the second one is. This is a Hollow Knight reference, by the way, if you just are tuning in now.
I got the first one, but I don't
No,
think I don't know what the second
no,
one
the
is
second
either.
Hollow Knight is the second one. The first one is
Oh, Little Devil
oh
Inside?
yeah, Little Devil
Because yeah,
Inside.
like,
Oh,
I would
We
okay.
like
don't
to
talk
see
That
about
that.
makes
that.
sense.
We
That
don't
I
makes
talk
know, I'm
about
sense.
trying to
that.
think of though Little Devil Inside, I would have to imagine would be at more like a PlayStation thing than a Day of the
Right.
Devs thing,
I
but,
mean, Day of the Devs is nice because it's not connected to any platform in particular,
yes,
so
it's
you
third
never
party.
know. The
Yeah,
others,
I think those are the main ones that I'm, like, not the Hollow Knight meme one, but of the ones that I'm, like, waiting for the drop on. Yeah, I don't think anything else too particularly.
right. And some of
Yeah, what
that
about you,
also
Jill?
excites me because I'm also like, okay, I can think of a few things off the top of my head, but having it at this time of the year, I'm very excited that that means we're going to see a lot of reveals, which is not usually what Day of the Devs is about. It's usually about like here are some things that you know about but are coming up. So I'm very excited about that. And then kind of sprinkled in the press release, and they were not highlighting this, but it's in there. Unfortunately, they're not having their typical November event in San Francisco, and since I'm in the Bay, that is very sad for me because I always go to that. They will push it to 2024, but again, that seems actually like a really smart move this year, considering how like completely impacted the fall of this year is for all games, not just indie games. Um, so yeah, I'm sad not to be able to go this year, but hopefully everything amazing happens. And that also talks more about maybe we'll see some reveals that we're not expecting. So yeah, keep that on your calendar. December the 6th is the next showcase. Speaking of things that are not coming this year, Replaced got delayed very recently. The developers put a statement up on social media, which was previously called Twitter, and I won't call it X. Um, so I'll put that into this description. But essentially, game development is hard, and they're working tough. They have a lot of pressure on them. A lot of people are excited for this game. They don't want to put something out that's subpar and have that hit them and tank their reputation. So they're working harder on it. And we didn't get a release window at all, but I'm excited. I'm happy that they're pushing it back. If they feel like they're not able to put something out there they'll be excited about. Anybody else keeping up with this news?
Yeah, like it's a game I'm looking forward to, but it's also one that I feel a little bit like trepidatious about. I think I'm using that word
Mm-hmm.
right. Like it looks really, really cool, but like I'm just not sure about it. Like if it's going to deliver on, I think how stunning and enticing like the trailer is, and I really can't quite fully put my finger on why I feel that way because it just sounds silly to be like this thing that looks really cool. I'm not sure about. I think I've just
Mm-hmm.
seen a lot of stuff that has nailed aesthetic and atmosphere in the trailer, but not exactly in the gameplay. I think there's something about that kind of gameplay that's sort of a experiential, like you're walking left to right and like you're intrigued about what's going on. Like I'm not sure about it. So honestly, like the delay I found kind of like not a relief, but I'm like, I don't know. It's I'm very cool with it for that reason because it's one that I feel like it could go either way. And if this is going to help them get their game into that more positive framework, then that's sort of what excites me about the idea that they, I guess, are acknowledge the necessity to kind of do that, I
Yeah.
suppose. Which is, I don't know, kind of a weird take, but that's kind of where I'm at with Replaced. Very much looking forward to it, but I feel like it can go either way kind of game for what it's aiming to accomplish.
Yeah. At the very least, this announcement, like you said, relief is a weird word, but it does make me feel a little better because it is tough when you see a game and everyone's excited about it and you see this trailer and it's amazing and then it just goes silent. Even if they're not announcing something publicly, typically if you're in the press, you get some kind of news about something. Maybe you hear people are getting hands on with it or something. For a game to just completely disappear and then drop is usually a bad sign. So I'm glad that we're getting some sort of public information that's saying, hey, we're holding off on this. Hopefully, we will get to check it out at some point. Like, hey, maybe it'll show up at Day of the Devs, we'll see. But Luke, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think I would just echo what both of you said. I'm super excited for the game, but I was a little bit relieved in another lens of just like I have so much to play right now and I'm trying to map out coverage for the next few months and it's just becoming kind of overwhelming. So a
Yeah.
game coming out in 2024 right now is like awesome. I'll be able to give you the time of day that you deserve, so that's rad. But I do agree, Janet, the comments you mentioned about just kind of like expectations for this one feeling a bit in the gray area in terms of like I was super excited by that initial trailer, but anytime I feel like we have like years in between an announcement and like any real update, your mind can kind of wander and expectations can kind of either get overhyped or you're just like not sure how to feel about it. So that's kind of where I'm at too.
100%. But moving on to more happy news. exciting news. Case of the Golden Idol just dropped its DLC. This is third DLC for it, and it is the last DLC for the Case of the Golden Idol. It connects the first game, or the canonically the DLC comes first, and then the original game. So this connects both of those together. It launched just before PAX, so I still haven't been able to jump into it, and it's killing me because I needed to go around and do things. But hopefully, I get to check that out soon. And then also, really cool is to get more people into the series itself. They decided to release the first 3 mysteries of the original game on web browser for free. So if you have a web browser of any sort, you can go and check out their website and just play through the first couple of puzzles and see how you feel about it. Because it is one of those games that's very difficult to explain. You don't want to spoil anything. Looking at the images is weird because the art style is very off the wall. So if you don't know how good this game is, you might look at it and be like, I don't know how I feel about this. But I don't know how I feel about shadow dropping, especially at this time period, because so much oxygen in the room is being taken up by PAX and all the things that are happening in the showcases. And we just had Gamescom. So, unlike in the first uh, DLC, which wasn't shadow dropped, but it was dropped like days after its original announcement, I didn't get a chance to be excited. I didn't have a chance to like hype it up and let people know that something exciting was going to happen. It was basically I got a news story up that was like, "Hey, this dropped. Everyone should check it out." And then I had to move on. And it says a lot that I haven't even been able to play it, and I'm a huge fan of this series, I guess. I
Right.
don't know if you can call it a series just because it's got DLC, but this IP. Um, so yeah, anybody feeling any which way about the new DLC?
I think just so I haven't played the Case of the Golden Idol yet. I really need to. I think
It's
especially with this
so good.
DLC, it's like maybe this should push me over the edge to check it out. My colleague over at MinMax, Sarah Pazorski, loves the Case of the Golden Idol.
Yeah,
I think it might have made our 210s last year, which is like MinMax's top 20 list, except don't tell them I said it was a top 20. It's the 210s.
it's the 210s.
If you add 10 and 10, it's 20 games. Okay. But anyway, um, yeah, so I've heard great things. I think as far as the shadow drop aspect of it, um, I think it can be fine because the reality is I mean, maybe it's different for indies. I will say that, like, but it's at least in the AAA space, like, no one plays DLC for any game, like, at all. Like, which is fine. Like, I don't think that means it shouldn't be made or that you shouldn't, maybe put those extra like efforts to market it. Like, I get the frustration of it. It's like, oh man, it's here and now. Like, I'm kind of scrambling to like get my hands on it or figure it out. But like, the reality is probably for the hardest core of the hardest core of the hardest core in the sense that like, and I was talking about this at PAX with some people where it's like the percentage of people that play your game versus finish your game, which is very small. And then the DLC, like, and I know there are some people that, especially listening to the show, are eating up every like DLC for every game that they vibe with because it's more of the game. Absolutely. But if anything's going to shadow drop in the realm of the Golden Idol or their projects, I think DLC is the safest because I'm guessing that it's not anything too wild or off the wall like with DLC in general because of what it is and just how players tend to respond to that packaging for any game.
Right. And because it is such a like you go in and you solve cases and they're sort of contained. Like
Okay,
obviously they
like almost
connect to each
episodic
other.
energy to
Yeah.
it.
So it works really well for DLC because it's just like, oh, I get another case to
Yeah.
solve. So it is a really nice game for the DLC expansion content.
I do think
If
we're
you haven't
seeing
checked
like
it,
an influx of DLC for indie games, or maybe I just haven't been paying as close attention to it in previous years, but I feel like that's like it feels fairly common for indie
yeah.
games to get DLC these days.
Yeah. Like Cult of the Lamb just dropped
Yeah.
a couple of weeks, like a whole new content drop, and I was not prepared for that.
Escape Academy
For
is still
sure.
going. So I don't know. Maybe that's probably an episode in itself, us kind of discussing or deep diving or maybe highlighting some of our favorites of that. But I do think I like that you did point that out though, the structure of it, because that does kind of I think make it a little bit more exciting because I know like when more Operation Tango stuff dropped, I was like, okay, let me check this out. But then also I don't think I actually ended up playing it, but like
For sure.
I had intent. I've downloaded the packs.
You're glad it exists, for sure.
Yeah, there's a version of me that is eating it up. Like, just not
Yeah.
in this universe.
Yeah.
Yet.
Definitely.
I haven't gotten there yet, but
Speaking of things that maybe perhaps you haven't gotten to yet, Janet, how you doing with the groupies?
oh man, no, still the meme continues. Still, and I brought my Steam Deck to PAX because I'm delusional, and I still think that I'm gonna play games on the plane. I'm gonna brought my Kindle.
Yeah.
I didn't read. I didn't game in my hotel. I just, one day I'll stop packing all those things because I don't use them.
Yeah. I was proud of myself this year because I didn't bring my Switch. I just brought the Steam Deck.
I know, but
And
the
I'm
Steam
like,
Deck's
I
so
don't
big,
know
and I didn't play
why.
either. I should have brought the smaller thing to not play.
Yeah.
I brought both and didn't play them either. It's
Yep.
I'm
the,
gonna
it's
honestly,
the
I'm gonna
move, I
start bringing the
guess.
I'm gonna start bringing the play date because it's so tiny.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
I'm like, you know what? Granted, without the backlight, it's still a little bit of an uphill battle, but like I'll make it work, I think.
And then rounding out this section of indie news, I just want to shout out some really fun and exciting release dates that we got throughout the last couple of weeks. Gunbrella is coming out September the 13th. So they
Hell
gave us a very
yes.
short announcement to release window. Very excited about that. And then Slay the Princess is coming out October the 20th. Great time for the spooky vibes.
Yep.
Perhaps a little harsh considering what's happening around that time, but I'm excited to check that out. And I
Heck
know
yeah.
that Jenny was very excited about Slay the Princess, so I wanted to make sure that Jenny got her voice in there for this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I'm glad
It's
to see
so
that.
good. Yeah. I'm excited.
And Gunbrella is gonna be awesome. I've been looking forward to that
Yeah.
forever, and
I
I'm
had
like so excited that it's actually coming out this year because I wasn't for a little bit. I was a little unsure, if it would make the calendar year.
Yeah. I
I
had
think
an
I have.
extended.
Or sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I have both of these games in my fantasy critic, so I was secretly like, "Oh my god, this could
I
be
have
my comeback. This is
I
my
have Gunbrella
in my
fantasy
moment." Yeah.
critic too, and I forgot what. God, everything's blurring together, and I have such like brain fog from PAX. But there was an indie title last year that a lot of people maybe it was Cult of the Lamb, really. But I when I drafted Gunbrella, I said this is going to be this year's Cult of the Lamb, and I don't think it'll have that same level of like fandom love because I think there's something about like it's almost like the emo Animal Crossing kids resonate with Cult of the Lamb, and I think that's a really big audience of gamers. So I don't think Gunbrella will have that because like as much as it's fun that it's a gun and an umbrella, like it's not the same as like a lamb that has a cult, but it's gonna be, I think, like a banger title that like a lot of people are gonna like.
For
I don't know. I'm
sure.
very excited.
Yeah, I got an extended preview on this game. I loved what I played. The humor is really fantastic in this, even like for marketing and stuff. So at PAX West, they had a shirt that was a Gunbrella shirt, but it's a copy of Singing in the Rain.
Oh my
Cute.
god,
With your
that's
like
awesome.
Gunbrella. I'm like, oh, there's no way I'm not getting that. So I bought way too much. Speaking of buying too much at PAX, let's talk about the topic of the show, PAX West 2023. And before, typically I would do a little spiel and of getting people kind of warmed up, but we have the ghost of Mike Towndrow from Beyond the Grave who
Ooh,
decided to
spooky.
write in.
This is
So
how I want
I'm
to make
gonna
all my appearances if I were to pass. Like
Ooh.
I'm gonna write a year of takes when I know it's like starting to go south, and people will just
Yeah.
read them on shows.
So this is what our lovely ghost friend says. I'm sure y'all will discuss it, but it was an organizational nightmare. All of the fellow exhibitors I spoke with were not aware it was two buildings until we arrived to set up. It caused a ton of confusion and made a mess of our appointments, not to mention the usual setup woes and having to bounce around all over the place to support and whatnot. Nintendo seemed to be the major wrench in the plans. I adore PAX, so I genuinely hate to complain about anything. I am praying all of PAX proper can be an arch for 2024. So he is talking about the fact that PAX this year was split between brand new constructed building Summit and the traditional convention space Arch. And he wants everything to be an Arch in 2024, and I am not down for that. I would love to see everything in Summit in 2024. I'm going to make Team Summit shirts just because the new building is huge and has all this natural light and it's got all these cool architectural features and it just seems to be thought out better, planned out for as big a crowd as PAX gets because it has like space for exhibits on every single floor. I think it's 5 floors tall. It's got space for seating everywhere. It's got little nooks and crannies for like the media room. This year we could go in and we had the media room in the new building this year and we could have 2 layers of game stuff and 1 layer of tabletop and 1 layer of, you know, fixing your uh, cosplay or, you know, whatever it is. But just to like let people know, even though I've been running around the convention center circuit for a while, this is actually my first PAX experience.
Oh,
Mm.
nice.
And it is an unusual experience for me because typically my shows tend to be industry focused. So it's a very different energy to show up and it is a fan centric event. There's no getting around it. It is for the fans, it's for people to show up. So there's a lot less like it's weird because you're just walking through and you're thinking about like work stuff and then all of a sudden you see like Beetle walking by and I'm like, "Oh my god, they made the entire storefront and they look fantastic." And it also has a weird kind of situation of a lot of the appointments that I am making, I show up and I am like cutting in line and
Oh yeah,
that's an
okay.
unusual
That's a
situation.
whole can of worms, yeah.
I'm like, so oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I don't want to cut you off before you're done talking. I'd love
No,
to
no, no,
if you
I'm
had any
done. Go
okay.
ahead.
Cuz I'm curious now Luke, what is your history with PAX and then
Sure.
what's sort of your high level take on the show especially with the building split and, you know, and with some of the things that Jill brought up.
For sure. So I went to PAX West 2018 as a fan. And then PAX West 2022 was my first one as media. And then I've been going to East and West since as media. Yeah, it was a very interesting setup this year. I was really surprised that they split things up the way they did because in my mind the old space was so rough that that's why they were constructing the new space for everything to be in there. Like I think about the Boston Convention Center for East and how everything is in this one giant building. The show floor is one giant show floor. Panels are on the levels above. Tabletop stuff is on the levels of I think actually that's on the show floor too because the show floor is so big. But I just like logistically, I really enjoy East from that side of things. But doubling back to your points about the fan focused nature of the show, Jill, I think for someone like me that's new to the games media scene, trying to kind of break into the industry, I've enjoyed it in a sense that it has felt less intimidating being among other fans of the game. And I don't necessarily feel like a fish out of water. Like imposter syndrome, I shouldn't be here because
Yeah.
other folks that are just fans of the game are also here. So it kind of feels like a safe space for me in that regard. But it is awkward where you run into those instances where it's like, I am here for my appointment, even though you've been waiting probably 40 minutes to play this game. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. What gives me the right to do this? I have a podcast, but everybody has a podcast. Like,
Not like your
so
podcast or else they'd be on
well,
the other side of the other
appreciate
side.
that, but it is awkward, and I definitely have felt moments where I'm like, oh, I feel bad, but also I'm doing a thing. We're doing the
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, especially for me when it's like I've got 30 minutes here and then I have another appointment. So
Yeah.
like I really
sure,
don't but there have definitely a couple of times when I walked up and they literally stopped someone from like there was a
yep,
person reaching their hand out to
hmm
the
hmm
controller and they had to like
Yeah.
push him out of the way to
Mhm.
make room. Make room. And I always
For
feel like
the
some of
Indian
the
former.
yeah. Uh-huh. I have people like just announcing me and splitting the crowd as I walk by. Um,
Mhm.
I definitely feel like some of my would you rather questions were based around these experiences
Oh, no, for
because
sure.
the intense feeling that that person who has been waiting for who knows maybe hours to come see this game that you are just stepping up and playing like they have to be sitting there like you didn't even get that jump that you know and there is some There is a strange effect of being amongst the people. um
Coming down from your ivory
of
tower and seeing how the
Yeah,
other half
just
lives.
climbing down. Of like there are a lot of people who, as a matter of course, just hate media.
Yeah,
And like it
I've
was
heard
such
of
a
those people, I think.
I had a situation
I've
where
heard
I was
from
like,
those people, I think. Go ahead.
yeah, I've heard a lot from those people. That I was walking back from the mix and it was at night and it was like only a few blocks back to like the convention center area, but it was like dark and I didn't want to be alone. So I joined a group of people who I hadn't met before, but they were lovely. And they started talking about things that were like kind of controversies and things they'd heard and rumors and news and that sort of thing. And I was like, wow, what you took away from things is so different than what I've taken away from things. And I'm like, here's how I understood what was happening there. And like just hearing how like it's so weird because as a writer, even before I was the Indie Informer, I was working at Game Informer. The amount of people who just take what you say on faith as gospel is sort of wild. And I'm like, please do your research on like what was happening and on the context of this because they didn't have time to write and fully flesh everything. But then to hear that take and hear it like they didn't, most people don't read fully everything you've written, even if you're super nuanced. So they just take away from it like obviously this developer was lazy or this game sucked or whatever. And I'm like, I know that we talk about these being opinions, but like it's strange to hear it in the wild.
Yeah, I feel like you played that story very close to the chest. And I'm like wondering,
Yeah,
obviously you don't need to share like I mean I get you probably don't want to say like someone said this
yeah,
toxic thing, let me repeat it verbatim, but was it
yeah.
just like was it these like fans you were walking with that were just like I can't stand like this review? I mean, you don't have to again name the review and the
No,
reviewer
it
or something,
was
but
because I have friends on both sides of this. I don't
sure.
like I don't want to jump too hard into it, but it
Right.
was talking about the Baldur's Gate 3 IGN video.
Okay. Yeah. I was like,
Mhm,
So
mhm.
the amount of people who were just had taken the base like top level
sure.
understanding of that was very interesting for me. Um so like not even trying to be like rude or like it was really nice. I introduced myself. They were excited. They were like even before they knew that I covered exclusively indies. They were talking about indies and how great they are. I'm like, that's fantastic to see that side of just mainstream
Yeah.
consumers picking up on indies and loving them. And the fact that the show floors were like really split some chunks of AAA, but like a lot of indies
Yeah.
there. And I was having a great time, which like we talked about being able to go see every indie of the show and how that probably wasn't possible humanly. But yeah, there's just a lot to check out. And I'm very exciting that they didn't have just like, here's the one little indie section and then, the rest of the show. Did you guys find that?
Yeah, I mean, I admittedly I didn't walk the floor as much as I normally do because I was there for MinMax to cover Nintendo Live, which also to swing it back really quick to the big picture stuff and Mike's ghostly note. The reason that he mentioned like the kind of how do you word it? Nintendo seemed to be the wrench in the plans, which again I don't know how confirmed this is or not, but that is also what I heard. But also that's kind of what everyone heard
Mhm.
of that. So Nintendo brought
Sure.
back Nintendo Live to inadvertently take away from the indie side for a second, but because it's relevant to the construction of the area, they haven't done live in a while, anyways. So live is just like it's like a fan event. It's big. It's got like, you know, photo ops, and they had a band, and Wonder was there, and what was heard is that they got kind of first dibs on where they'd be set up at between like the two spaces, so that the division ended up being like in the arch was Nintendo Live and some PAX stuff, and then in the summit was some PAX stuff. And I definitely agree with really Mike or Jill because I just want everything in one building. I think it was
Yep.
in terms of if you have to divide things between two buildings and you have two things that are PAX, which is the same event, and one thing that is Nintendo Live, which is quite literally a separately ticketed event. Like, you
Mhm.
cannot walk into Nintendo Live with your PAX badge. If you could, I mean, I still would prefer it to be split up differently, but like, at least it would make a little bit of logistical sense. But I think the fact that literally PAX attendees cannot attend Nintendo Live, you need to also have the separately ticketed for free but raffled off live badge. It just didn't seem like a good division. And I get, maybe, financials or first come, first serve, but I just feel like for the better of the show, it just does not make any sense to have them divided that way. And then really quick for my background on PAX, I went last year to West, this year to East, and then also this year to West. So this is my third PAX. I agree with you, Luke. The East feels luxurious compared to the layout of West
Oh
because
yeah.
East is all in one building, and not only is East all in one building with all the panels in one building. Because even without this division last year, like a lot of stuff for PAX for panels is really spread out. Like go downtown, go down the streets to some hotel, and then or something weird like for the panels.
Can,
But not only that, East you can quite literally get way more expensive, but one of the hotels that you can get for East is literally connected to the convention where you do not have to walk outside. Like you can
yeah.
live a life of luxury at East that you cannot live at West. And I love both shows. They're both fairly similar. People argue one's more game focused, one isn't, but like, yeah, that's the background. And yeah, in general, I think there's a great indie presence at West. I think to bring it back to what I believe was our last episode, Jill, talking about the sort of is it better to put indies on one section or not, or like we
Mhm.
know what developers think about that. Yeah, it did feel very generally mixed up. And overall, there's definitely a lot of negativity that can come from like the quote unquote general population. And unfortunately, there's also a lot of negativity that can come from inside the house. Like, not everyone in our industry, unfortunately, is, kind or critic first or understanding or nuanced. Like, I know that's a reality. I'm thankful that the people that I have rolled with and that I have been fortunate enough to meet all have seemed to be very wonderful people, kind, funny, thoughtful, complimentary. And the same has gone for the fans I've encountered, fortunately, at PAX. Like, I joke that, we talk about toxic gamers, and I'm like, no, those people are here. And of course, I'm sure there are because of the numbers, but I don't feel that when I'm there. I feel it's just like a bunch of friendly nerds all together. And the fact that there's so many like fans that will come up and talk about their favorite things they played, and often it is the indie stuff. Also in part because the AAA line is always going to be longer than the indie line, but like that's another
Mhm.
benefit of like if you want to just go and play games, like chances are you're probably going to at least touch one indie game. Like you'd have to
Yeah.
really try not to, and just decide like I'm not going to do it because again the lines it's a mixed bag. But I jumped on stuff because I didn't have appointments for like anything. I jumped on stuff just regularly fairly easily depending on what it was. So yeah, and I did feel like it was all pretty intermixed.
Yeah, 100%. I am so interested in what that waiting in line situation is because like I did go to E3 once as a fan and the
Oh
lines
yeah, I
there were
know.
like you're
Hell.
gonna play like 2 things a day. So I wonder if that's a lot easier. Go ahead and let us know in the comments if
Yeah.
that's something you've ever experienced.
I mean,
But
even I can speak to that because that's what I did this year. And with the first year I was there too, I went as special guest. So I guess I didn't explain that. I went as special guest, aka a panelist.
mhm,
Which that's kind of that's just is what it is. Like you don't really get additional special treatment as special guest. Like you get a badge, which is awesome, and that costs a lot of money if you're not doing those things. But that's it. And then I went as media through my outlet Pen to Pixels. And then this year I actually went as a creator through MinMax. So I've gone to all these different ways.
We've had
So
all of them at various points.
yeah, I've been joking. I'm collecting all the badges, like the Infinity
Love
Stones.
it.
I need exhibitor. I need VIP. And
Okay.
someone mentioned I need GA, but I'm like, I don't want the GA badge. Like, no, man. Again, I do this for work, so like, it just doesn't make sense to also just spend the money for the cloud
Of
of
course.
being, you know what I mean? But right, but
Yeah, of
um,
course.
the way it varies. So obviously for stuff that's like, I don't know, maybe really like, I'm sure Prince of Persia. I'm sure that line was very long,
Yeah.
because that's like a Ubisoft game. Though admittedly I didn't look, but that's because I already played it. That's why I didn't stop by Prince of Persia. But like something like Time Flies, I was there and there was like a couple people, 3 or 4 people. Something like Devolver can be mixed, right? Like I went this time around the last day where it was more dead, and I was only behind 2 people. I went last year for Gunbrella, and I was behind like 5 or 6 or 7 people, and their demos are long, and people
Mhm.
want to play the whole demo. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm kind of here for like an hour. So it just depends on many factors. the popularity of the game, how busy it happens to be at that one instance, how long the demo is. Sometimes these are untimed, uncapped demos, and the exhibitionists are not always policing people's time, which again,
Yeah.
that's their choice. Sometimes there are time demos that are built in. Sometimes they're time demos like they put a physical timer next to you when you sit down and start. So it just really depends on what's going on. I definitely think there are like some games where, in no way to shade the game, where like there can be just like, oh, a couple stations open, like I don't know, they hit like a quick dead spot. It's again last day, like the first day and the last day are always like the most dead,
Mhm.
especially because if you look at people's more traditional work schedules, like the weekends are always going to be the biggest time. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think you can, especially if you're going like every day, like you're going to be able to play pretty much anything you'd want to play, I would say, because yeah, you can just decide to like how you want to split up that prioritization. But um to also swing it back to something you mentioned, Jill, yes, it is very awkward when you have an appointment and there is no like setup. So for people who don't, are listening and have not been like the press or like creator or whatever, have an appointment. So sometimes for press, they have like a secret like little area like
Mhm.
behind the booth. There's like a setup for like press to be doing stuff.
Right.
But
They've, like,
sometimes
put
it's
up
just
PVC
yes.
pipe and, like, have a little curtain hanging
Yeah,
out.
Sure.
like you can't like even see it. Like people walk you back there, but sometimes it is just like a regular station, and that is a little bit awkward. I think one thing that helps take the sting out of that for fans is that, in my experiences, not all the times, but a lot of times when that happens, those people that had to wait an extra time for my appointment, get like a piece of swag or something that they're giving out normally, or like an extra whatever, or just like something for their consideration and understanding. What's even more awkward than having an appointment is like I've been at times where it's like I'm standing there and like maybe I do mention explicitly that I'm a creator, maybe I don't, but they notice that I have the badge and they'll be like, "Oh, do you want to play?" And they kind of just and I'm like, "Yeah." And so they're
Shoo
like,
someone
"Cool.
out.
Let's just throw all these people to the side and have you come on down." Um but I have to imagine that like people probably understand it to a degree. Like, I don't know. At the same time, I was tweeting out how I hate the clear people at the airport because I have TSA
Uh-huh.
free and I don't have clear. And I'm like, forget these people. So I don't know. I, I think if anyone is petty about it, it is quick passing and probably jokey. And if they're not, they probably are a deeply angry person. You know what I mean? I can't imagine anyone taking it too
Right.
seriously. But yes, it is a little bit like, oh, look at you. Like how the other half
Right.
live. But
I'm just,
yeah.
like, deeply conscious of the fact, like, you've been standing in
No,
line
it's
for
definitely it is you're not the first and you definitely won't be the last person to talk to me about that, and, like, I've talked about that so many times too of, like, even me without appointments, like, I know I probably could have done that a bit, but I'm like, "You know what? I'm gonna just kinda it's fine." Like, I'm good today I don't need to do that because it is awkward to be like, "Excuse me? I'm a critic. I'm part of games media. Roll out the red carpet and get me set up on a station." Yeah, it's awkward.
Yeah.
I
You mentioned Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Luke.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna chime in with one thing. I will say, when I attended as a fan, I just was excited just to be in the room. The idea of playing pre-release anything was really exciting to
Hell
me,
yeah.
and I think that kind of like transcended any like minor like. I feel like as a fan, I played maybe like, let's say, 4 or 5 demos a day, unless I waited for something crazy AAA. Um, but then on the content side, it kind of makes sense that we end up playing more because then we're like producing content based on those experiences. But I think it goes both ways, and I think like it can be a positive thing for both parties,
Yeah.
ideally.
Yeah, I love the swag system. And speaking of swag, what was your favorite piece of swag you got this year?
Ooh.
Mine would have been I left it at the ramen shop that I went to
Oh
afterwards.
no.
But I got
No.
oh gosh, I keep blanking on the name of the game. Pepper drill,
Pepper grinder
pepper
Pepper grinder?
grinder,
Yeah, yep.
from
pepper
Devolver.
grinder, Devolver Digital. I this game had totally passed me by prior, like I hadn't heard about it until I saw it on the floor, and I played that, and that was awesome. And they gave you like a foam finger, but it is like of the drill that the character
Cute.
has on their hand. I
Nice.
don't know if they're holding it
Uh-huh.
or if it's welded to their skin. I'm not gonna lie, I skipped the cutscene that plays at the beginning to save time. But but yeah, that was probably my favorite. And then I didn't get it, but shout out to oh my gosh, please let me remember this. Oh, it's a game called like I think I took a picture of it. Pizza. pizza something. It was like a shooter. I don't know if anyone saw this at the floor.
Oh, was this the one that kind of looked like The Division, but you ate
Yeah, yeah,
pizza to regain health? I didn't play it, but
yeah.
I
Pizza
watched it a
Bandit.
little bit. That's it.
Pizza
Yeah.
Bandit. I didn't get it because it was like the swag, their thing. So swag works a couple ways, right? Like sometimes it's just stuff given out, like, oh, you played the demo, like you get it. Sometimes it's like you have to do extra things like follow or wish list or something. This one was like sort of raffly. Like if you played, you had a chance to get the t-shirt. And I wanted the t-shirt so bad because it said Pizza Bandit on the front. And on the back it had a skull with like an outer circle, like 2 circles, and it like a kind of like a badge. And it said um some pizza saves, bullets kill, I think is what it said.
That's pretty
And
sick.
like
Love it.
I
That's
was
pretty
like, this
sick.
is gonna shoot up to like the number one sleep shirt in my house slash content shirt when I'm
Nice.
lazy. If
Nice.
I get this. Unfortunately, I did not get it. Like I was with Cam and Ryan at the time, and I was like, I want this shirt so bad. Cam's like, I'll play, and if I get it, I'll give it to you. And then I didn't get it. And then Tatum also played it and was like, I didn't get it. And then I said, F it. I'm gonna play, even though I'm not even that good at this genre of game. And I also didn't get it. But genuinely that game
No.
looked very cool as well. So I do think
Nice.
definitely swag can, have a positive impact. Cause like, I mean, I was already gonna check out that game, but I wasn't gonna demo it personally because I just felt like I already knew what it was. I just wanted to see what it was about. And I can do that
Mhm.
with a friend demoing next to me. But that kind of added, extra hype, extra conversation. Like I chatted with like the devs while we were in line and stuff. So yeah, that was mine. But what about y'all?
I ended up with a sweet hat from Aggro Crab that I
Yeah,
purchased
you
after I played
did.
Another Crab's Treasure because I was really
Cool.
excited about that game. Probably my game of the show. They had this awesome hat that had the cute little crab on the front, but he's holding a knife,
Yep.
and I just thought that was hilarious and awesome. So I purchased that hat. So that was
That
probably my favorite.
that studio is so good. I went over and I got one of their shirts just because I wanted to like give them money. But
Did
I
you know
didn't
that
actually.
like the booth that they have, the wooden shack, they built it in one of their devs' backyards? That like blew my
Wow.
mind. I love that.
How did you get it there? I don't even want to think
I
about that.
think
I
one of
got
them
very.
lives locally and they like put it in a truck or something. I don't know. We were
It's got
chatting a
like
little
the
bit on the last
crab
day, and
hanging
yeah,
out.
they like their booth looked great though, but it was
I
really
did
fun.
see it at one point. They have, if you haven't seen, we did talk up one of these episodes. They had like a music video with their mascot
Yes.
uh suit, and the mascot suit was sitting there, and I was so tempted to just grab it and run. I was like, this is gonna be the best swag ever, but I didn't, and now I'm sad. My favorite swag was when I was finishing up my appointment with Whitethorn, and I'm
Mm.
gonna get all their games out there. I'm very excited about a lot of them. Um, I got a thing that to me at first looked like a sort of piece of art or something from Evan's Remains, which came out some time ago. But I looked a little farther into it, and it turned out to be vinyl.
Ooh,
I was like,
that's cool.
Oh.
"Oh, this is so cool." It was like a see-through like vinyl for the
That's awesome.
soundtrack. Like that is an amazing idea. Everyone should be giving out their soundtrack on vinyl. Like
That's
I know,
wild.
yeah, I know that that's like a risk because I don't know how many people are actually able to play it, but like I can
Right,
and I would
right.
love it.
Yeah. You said this came out already? Evans Remains?
Yeah.
Have you and you've played it then, yes? Is
I've
it like
played it a little bit. I didn't do like an
okay.
impressions or like a review on it, and
Sure, sure,
it was
sure.
fun. Little puzzle game.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Like
Nice.
their games have been a little bit like mixed for me with like Whitethorn. But I
Uh-huh.
really like Botany Manor. I played that like
Yeah.
last
Yeah, that's a
PAX.
good one.
Very excited for that one.
Yeah, yeah. Nice.
I liked
I wanted
Recall earlier this year from them.
Recall
I thought it was really
really
cool.
Oh.
cool. Really good. That was do you think that you could beat that protagonist in a fight?
No, no, that protagonist too
Because he's got
clever,
magic
too cunning.
powers.
Yeah, he's got time manipulation on his side. He can go back and do it again.
Oh, this style looks really cool. I didn't I feel like Whitethorn Games is one that I didn't start to have on my radar until I went to a PAX and like jumped on a few of their titles, and now I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
cool. Which is also like a just a nice thing about whether you're industry or not. You just get to know, I think, some of the lanes a little bit more. Obviously, we all
Yeah,
have like ones we already know well. Like I've been a Devolver stan for a long time, but like yeah, like and it's interesting seeing too like the collections and the personalities I think behind some of these publishers. Like is really worth getting to know a little bit.
Yeah, 100%.
for sure.
Discoverability is really fun for these. Like uh unlike other shows where it's industry and stuff, like one of the bigger differences for this one is because it is fan based and it is a lot of walking around and just looking at things. Like you do just inadvertently kind of run into, oh, I didn't see, like I've never heard of this before. I will sit here and check this out. So, most of the time for other things, you're just like appointments back to back to back, which I was on this one as well. But I had a little bit more of an availability to just walk to the next booth and see things. So that was really cool. Uh, Going back to behind the scenes being press, giving people a little glimpse into the world of indie press. What's involved in indie press, like us attending an event like this? Uh, like when do we start thinking about it? When do you guys start
Mm.
scheduling? When do you know you're gonna jump on it? How do you get a press badge, get certified, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's definitely expensive to go to these is the thing. I genuinely was not gonna go to West this year because I went to West last year and I went to East. I do think too it's worth noting that East and West have a lot of overlap in the titles that are being shown.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
if you're looking to save money, I would recommend only going to maybe just one of those like a year because so there is overlap. So like you won't feel too much FOMO in that sense. Um but at a certain point PAX like puts out, "Hey, we have either badges up for sale," and usually around that time they also have like the media/content creator applications. And the application is fairly short. It's like one page web form. It's essentially, and y'all chime in if there's details I'm missing, but I believe there's because I can't pull it up now because it already got taken down. But it's like,
Yeah.
Sure.
your name, your email, your outlet or channel, depending on what's up. And I think, maybe some links right to those outlets or channels. Maybe they ask for social media links. I do not remember or have that as an option.
I
And
think it's
the thing I don't
optional.
remember,
If
yeah. Is there a space to write anything? I don't remember if there is.
I
there
don't
might be
think
a
so.
I think there's a space at the very end of
Like an
like, is
optional,
there
like, plus
any
more
Anything
additional
else?
notes that you
Yeah.
would like us to keep in mind? And that's usually
Yeah.
where I put in like, I also write things at this link, or just to
Yes,
like
exactly.
specify that like
Uh-huh.
the variety of coverage for maybe the thing that they don't prompt you to say.
Yeah, and that's what if assuming that box does exist and we're not
Right.
imagining it.
Sure.
For
Yeah.
me personally, it depends on what's going on. So like since I freelance for some outlets, like when I was with MinMax for this, like Ben's like, "Oh, apply for it, you're going to go for us." So for that I just did all my MinMax stuff and I said like I'm, part of MinMax whatever. When I went for it as Pen to Pixels, that in that about I probably did right. Oh, I also appear on these shows, so,
Hmm.
just so people know like the additional like value that's there. But I will say like it is not, and by saying this I do not mean to be discouraging if you applied and did not get a badge, so don't feel bad if you applied and didn't get it. But I will say like it is not, I think, as hard as some people think it is to get a badge. I think a lot of people look at an event like this and they think that they'll look at this and say, well, you know I'm not Lukewarm Games. Like, I'm not as big as Indie Informer. I don't have the followers of like, Pen to Pixels or whatever, right? But like, it's not really looked at in that way. Like, they're not like, I
Mhm.
mean, obviously they're looking through applications, but I never got the sense of like, you need a certain amount of clout to do it. I think if you're
Yeah.
doing work,
Right.
you're doing work genuinely somewhat consistently, right? You have like a cadence, like if and you want to go, like apply for it. I do think, of
Yeah.
course, if you're applying, like be ready to go. So from a time standpoint and a financial standpoint, especially if you're working like a day job, like carve out the vacation days, figure out how you want to do it. There's obviously best to be by the hotel, but if you need to, like most people do start off and they're like, I'm Airbnb in and I'm coming in and like, and I think too, that's where like the benefit of having community can come in, and whether that community can be anything. It can be friends and family that they like games too and they want to be there with you and you kind of save on the hotel that way. It can be hey, it's me and a bunch of writers and we're like at this Airbnb together, or we're like on the hotel and we're sleeping on the sofa. Like a lot of people started out their career sleeping on the hotel floors for E3. It's like that.
Yep.
There's lots
Mhm.
of ways that you can go. But yeah, like I think it's kind of the application process, and like the thought process for me that goes behind it. Like, when do I want to go? Like, how am I investing in that? That's at least for like the getting there part. But of course, there's a lot more to discuss with the actual planning of the content and what you guys end up doing when you're there.
Yeah. I was pretty sure I wasn't gonna go this year. I had finished Summer Game Fest, and I'm like, yeah, this will probably be my last big thing. Maybe I'll go
Yeah.
to the Game Awards. Um, and I didn't really start to think about it. I got the email, and I was like, you know. But then I got a contact from one Luke Lewis, and he was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about putting a panel together.
Oh, yeah, I
Are
forgot
you
about those
headed to
emails.
PAX?" And I was like, "You know, yeah, I'm going." That was like, I don't know if I ever told you that, Luke. That was like the moment I decided, like, yeah,
That's
I
really
guess I am
cool.
gonna go.
No, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
That
Because
actually
I was
also
like,
happens a lot. I'm glad that you brought that up because I totally forgot that that's definitely a way that I've ended up also being like, "Sure." Like, "Yeah, why
yeah.
not?"
Because you're like, okay, if I am dedicating myself and saying I'm committed to this panel, I should probably be able to go. Um, so yeah, same thing. There is a sheet that you type in. It's not like the regular process for just getting a badge. Um, and it's weird because I still think of myself as not very well known. Like at one point, I was with Janet and I was introducing myself to someone, and I said, "Yeah, I work for the Indian Farmer." And Janet just like bit my head off and was like, in the nicest humanly way possible, she's like, "You work for? You're the founder, you're the CEO, you're the
Like, "You
You
She's
are
are
the Indian
the
Informer."
Indian Informer.
She was
I
like,
love
"I'm a
it.
small freelancer at a tiny outlet." I'm like, "No, no, no, you own the outlet." Like, you know?
I think we all
I'm
have
doing
those
great.
friends that'll like tee us up to like or like
Uh-huh.
hype us up in the moment. But yeah, I've done that too of like undersell what
Yeah.
you're doing. But yeah,
And I think it feeds into what Janet was saying, essentially, like, don't let your imposter syndrome hold you back
no way.
because people will see your work. And even if you're thinking, like, oh, it's not on the scale of like a Game Informer, you know, but it is surprising the amount of people who were interested in having me at places. Like, I'm always overbooking because I'm just so excited that people want me to check out their stuff. And then when I get there, people are genuinely like, "Yeah, we read your article on blah blah blah, and I love the
Oh,
way you
yeah.
do this, this, and this." And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." I have to try really hard not to like doubt them. um and be like, "No, you haven't." Because that's not a great thing to say professionally.
Like, "Really? You're a fan? Name 5 of my articles."
Yeah, uh-huh, uh-huh. Tunic. Dang it, I should have thought about that. Um, but yeah, no, you get press certified, and then you get on sort of a list. I've never seen this list. I kind of want to talk to Jenny or Mike because they're on the other side. They're on the PR side for some of this. That gets sent out to all of the people who are showing up to exhibit, and then they start hitting you up for things. Sometimes you know who's going to be there, and you reach out to make sure you get stuff. But a lot of the times, it's like the week or two before the show, your inbox starts getting inundated with just
Tell.
like, we're going to
So
be
many
at
emails.
PAX. So many emails of just like, we're showing this and this and this. And I am so like, I have to be so careful. So I always have my phone with me. And anytime that I'm suggesting, like, yeah, let's see about this time, I literally put it in my phone as like, hold for
Yeah,
this
mhm.
Mm-hmm. You got to
Yes.
because
do it.
otherwise I'll double book and forget that I'm doing something or other. So my phone just fills up with all of my stuff.
I'm
Um,
getting the stress again. The, like, I get
yeah,
stressed on the show a lot. We talk about some stressful topics sometimes, but no, like, well, I will say too, like, did you feel, not to put yourself on blast right now, but how do you feel that went for you this time around? You said it was your first one. Like, did you feel like, "You know what? I could have booked a little more." Or do you feel like you booked it perfect? Do you feel like, "Oh my god, I overbooked, like, I'm not even gonna get to some of these." Like, how did it shake
like
out for you?
the system of the scheduling works very similarly to other events, at least. So I have gotten better about that of just knowing like always leave time for lunch. Like,
Mhm.
uh, but besides that, the only thing that was really like, thanks to Nintendo, wrench in the plan, was that I was not aware that it would be in two separate buildings that were so far from each other.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times I do have things that are like, okay, I have half an hour here and then half an hour here and half an hour here, and it's back to back to back. But getting done and then having to walk 15 minutes to your next appointment, it's like, oh, I'm already halfway into, like, luckily for me, the only time where I was really worried about that happening, I was able to like rearrange some things and not miss my appointments. But um yeah, typically I don't get I try not to get too stressed, and I manage that just by being really hyper focused on like what my schedule is and writing everything down. Um kind of having an idea of what's going to be there. So I think the first couple of times I had situations or I went to these sorts of conventions, anyone who would message me, I was just like, yeah, absolutely. And like put in the things. Now I'm sort of like a little more choosy about the appointments that I take so that I have that time when inevitably last minute, like really big games that just got announced. Because a lot of the times you are either not getting appointments for games that are like they have some sort of like big release the day before PAX, and then they want to like reach out to all the press and be like, "Hey, you want to come see this game?" It's like, "Of course I want to come see this game, the next big indie revealed game." But my favorite ones are when you get emails that are like, "We can't tell you what this game is, but we promise you're going to want to be there."
Oh my
And
god.
okay, that's cool. So, a couple of them this year were code name such and
Yeah.
such, and I'm like, "Cool, I'll do that. I'll do
Love a
code
good
name such and
mystery.
such."
Yeah, sure.
I
Yeah,
know.
it's every single event is like some sort of cloak and dagger, like, "You wanna do this, wink, wink." I'm like, "Okay, I trust you."
I know. Every now and then that does like backfire. Or like so it depends because sometimes they'll say like we can't say what it is, but it's a like this genre or something, and you're like, cool.
Mhm.
Right.
But sometimes it's like especially with like SGF, this happened a lot where it's like it's just like the developer and it's like cool. And they're like, yeah, this is a genre that you've never played before and you never will play again. And I'm like, I don't think I should be here for this because I don't think this is a good use of anyone's time. But yeah, that's definitely a tough one. Jill, I'm curious, when you're there, what's your process when it comes to writing? Are you writing all your stuff there? And then Luke, like, what's your process with like the podcasting aspect of it? Like, I know you do have like also a site as well, so I'm not sure if you're like also doing writing while you're there, or if you do that more just like after the fact. But for each of you, what does the actual work outside of playing the games look like?
Yeah, I wanna hear from Luke on this because I saw
Sure.
pictures of him doing his podcast on the, like, summit floor, so hit us
Yes,
with it.
um I think I've learned over time to kind of strike a balance between trying to put up content while at the show and then doing things after the fact. In terms of writing, all of that is going up later this week or early next week, so it's all happening after the fact for me. I was able to do a couple of on-site interviews with devs for different projects at the show that'll be going into some podcast episodes in the coming days. And then I also made a lot of just networking connections with devs to then meet remotely in the coming weeks to do interviews later. It kind of just ends up being easier in a lot of ways. Of sound quality's better, everyone's a little more relaxed, we can chat for a longer amount of time, that sort of thing. um, but yeah, to Jill's comment, I did record an episode of another podcast I co-host called Crossplay Conversations. We were trying to kind of go for a like giant bomb couch style indie
Hell
creator
yeah.
scene. Yeah, so we
Mhm.
gathered up a bunch of friends. We were going to meet in the Arch building because in my mind I was like, oh, there's not that much going on. I'm sure we can find like a corner of the lobby because at this point we had like 10 or 12 people coming through. So I was like, we can't just meet at my hotel room. We have to go somewhere with a little more space. And then we ended up, I had everything set up, camera was ready, I had my Zoom and XLR cables and microphones and everything was ready, and we were about to sit down, and then security kicked us out because Arch, I guess, closes at 7 p.m. or at least did this past PAX West. So then we
Mhm.
all ran over to the Summit building and found a quiet corner on the fourth floor. And it ended up working out really great. I was looking through the video and audio. We have a nice background of the Seattle skyline, and we chatted with about 10 indie creator friends about what their favorite game of the show was, and that'll be going up next week. But it was really fun. It's always fun to in-person podcasting is just something I don't get to do very often. So anytime for crossplay conversations that I mentioned, I co-host that with Jacob McCord and Joseph Hooper, and Joseph lives in Seattle, Jacob lives in Eastern Canada, and so PAX is really the only time we get to see each other in person. So we always try to make a point to like do that while we're there together, and it's always a blast. So that's
Mhm.
one thing I really love about the show as well, is in addition to the games, but kind of having those connections and catching up with friends as well.
Hell yeah.
I so appreciate how hard a lot of people work during these events, because they're literally like seeing stuff, then writing stuff and putting it up like the same day. I'm like, that is beyond me. I I split my time by during the convention. I am just seeing the games and getting my thoughts together and making sure, because my appointments go from 10 when it opens to like 5, like, and
Yeah.
I have time for lunch, and usually there's like one weird, like, I don't know why I have a 30-minute thing here, so I'll go sit down and do something. But like I'm not usually giving myself the time to sit down and write things, and I'm not interested in going back to the media room or my hotel and getting stuff up and being overly tired. So I do tend to decide my coverage later. And this PAX specifically, because I am, I was booked every day. I have over 30 games that I want to cover. So, like, that's not games that I saw. Like, there are games that I saw that I'm not interested in covering. Um, so I have 30 games to play and or to cover, to write about. And because I am written, unlike, podcasting, I actually have a really terrible tendency, and I feel bad, like I'm not making them seem very important, to skip out on developer chats or like
Mhm.
interviews or anything. And multiple times during my appointments, someone from the PR team or someone who's getting you set up would be like, "Oh, do you want to talk with a developer?" I'm like, "No, sorry." Like,
Yeah, no,
on
I
one
get
hand,
that
I
I've
feel
had those too. If they're like ready
yeah.
to give me a 30-minute interview, and I'm like, I didn't prepare for. I'm so sorry.
yes.
It's
Yeah, I would
okay.
have nothing intelligent to ask. But not only that, um, it is for written content so much time. It is so time consuming. Like, the cost benefit analysis is not something I can do, because if I play a game and I get my thoughts down, I can do that. But in order to get someone else's thoughts correctly, you have to get like the recording of their voice and the transcript 100% correct. And transcripting is something that I did as an intern. That was one of my major duties, and I hope
Mm.
never like to deal with that, because it's a very like tedious and um long, lengthy process just to make sure you get everyone 100% correct, because you don't want to misquote anybody for anything. Um, so typically I don't do interviews. So yeah, because because I don't do interviews, I get the chance to play so many games. Um, and because I have so many games from this year, what I'm thinking of doing this year, and because I get to think about how I'm going to do my coverage, I think I'm going to do a series of like top threes. But instead of doing like top 3 games I saw, I probably will do that one, but it'll be things like top 3 like wildest games, off the wall things, top 3 things that came out of nowhere, top 3, RPGs, but with
Nice.
Yeah.
a more interesting hook than that. Uh,
And then when we see it's top 3 RPGs and she's like, "I couldn't think of anything else." Like that,
I'm
I've
not
had
gonna
that
think of
too where I'm
anything.
like,
I'm
"You know
sorry,
what?
yes.
This is just gonna be what I said at first."
Yeah.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. That's a lot of games. I don't think I've ever played that many games at a PAX 30. Like I was trying to find how many I did last, because like last PAX East was my last one that was like, oh, I went in because I only had media. Like I think I'd still had some panels to do though. I'm pretty sure for East, but yeah, I don't know if I write anything when I'm there. I try to, but I've yet to I think I'm still getting my footing on how I want like the flow of things to go, cuz I write some stuff when I get home, but at a certain point I just like I am done thinking of these days that we're, you know what I mean? I'm like, I can't live in PAX for like 8 more months while I try to finish this very, very old, like I'll preview a game. It's like, oh, the full game is out now. Like this previous preview is not,
Right. Yeah.
it's not relevant anymore. I think I maybe got out like 2, like last year, like last time I went to a PAX, not this one. I got like 2 things while I was there, and that's like it. And then I started writing some stuff on the plane home too, just in my notes app with my iPad.
Yep.
I would love to start being someone that can do the writing and have the thing there, but you do have to, like you said, to your point, Jill, like I'd have to play a lot less games to really be able to do that, which frankly, like might be worth doing. It's sort of, you just kind of have to pick like your lane a little bit. Yeah, and I take notes while I'm there playing on a physical notepad that like has a front flip. I don't know, the spine's on the top, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like a little,
Mhm.
You're a
like,
detective going
yeah,
to.
no, yes. I my
Yeah.
little detective notebook,
Love it.
and I write what is the most unintelligible, sloppiest looking 8
Yep.
words that mean a lot to me and don't mean anything to anybody else. But like that notebook is like pure gold for me. Like I think in that notebook, like, because there's like a spot for your name and stuff. I'm like, here's my name, here's the hotel that I'm, and you know, it's just kind of dangerous. But also, I need his back. I'm like, just put this in the lobby or whatever you find it. Like, I need this thing. It's like the only thoughts I have on this game are written in here, and I try to make them into something more intelligible for my website. But yeah, it's a lot. You know, you mentioned the scheduling of things, and for me, one of the real challenges too is the, like, because like I said, you could reach out to people. I usually just wait to see like what hits my inbox, and then it becomes at a certain point a game of like, okay, well, I'm interested, but am I interested enough to give up the time? Because like, what if something else comes along that like I really want to see? Because I'm definitely not one that no offense if this happens to you, because like I think sometimes that could happen, but if I book something, that's it. That time's there. Like if
Yep.
if Odyssey 2 comes out, too bad. Like I'm seeing Angerfoot or whatever it is, right? Like I really don't want to be like hot swapping for like the exciting you know, I kind of try to stick to what I had laid out before. Something else too that I don't know where this fits into the conversation, but I just thought was interesting is last year I went to PAX, and obviously this will depend on having again that community, that group of friends, but I went with I like went, you know, just kind of on my own, but I ran to my friend Steve Saylor, and I was talking to him, and he I don't know if he ended up joining me on any of my appointments because he might have got busy after a while, but like we were talking about what appointments we had next that day. And he's like, oh, I was like, I'd love to see that. And I'm like, well, you can come with me. Because a lot of times, like, it's chill to let people come with you to appointments. So also too, if you are whether you're a media person that has a friend who isn't quite in the industry yet, or a media person, even just with a partner, like you can, I mean, obviously ask politely and like understand that if they can't show up. But a lot of times they let like like your friend, whoever you're with, attend with you. And
Mhm.
like obviously like you don't want to, you know, don't just start doing coverage on stuff that you're not like permitted to do. But like I was talking to a friend who's like, oh yeah, like me and my girlfriend have to split up all the time because like I have all these appointments. And I'm like, you can bring her to the appointment. Like, you know, and some of that can be really valuable too if you just want someone to help like hold your stuff, like help record something for you. Like again, you know, don't just use your friends and family as like, you know, your workhorses.
Yeah.
But um a lot of times, again, talking about that community, like there are a lot of instances where you have people in your circle who are like welcoming and want you to succeed and want to introduce you to people. Like a lot of, you know, like and that cuts so many ways. Like I had, you know, this weekend people where you know, I know a good amount of people, and they'll be like, oh, I haven't met so and so. I would really love to meet them. And I'm like, okay, well, like I can introduce you. And I'm like, and I remember I had one phone call at the bar. I was like, hey, that person you want to meet is here. Like, come walk over here and like act like you just ran into me. And I'll be like, oh, have you met so and so? You know, so like there's
Uh-huh.
That's
a
awesome.
lot of ways to like have that happen in a way that's also like, again, there's bad ways to go about all this that are like clout chasey or gross or exploitative, but like a lot of things
Yeah.
can happen like very organically as you just start to, you know, I don't know, be genuine about what you're trying to do, and talking to people about what you're excited about. And that's how you end up meeting people in this industry a lot, or being able to like achieve things that you wouldn't be able to achieve on your own. Like, you know, don't let like those things hold you back from having like a better, a healthier, a more full experience at like a convention like this.
100%. And with that, a very nice in-depth overview of the convention and how we deal with it as press. Let's dive into the games. So our section of things we played is typically games full games that we were looking into for review coverage or whatever. But this year it's going to be, or this year, can you imagine if we only put a podcast out a year? This time around, we're only going to do PAX demos that we played because I don't think any of us had time to do anything
No,
else.
thank God. I was so afraid that I'd show up here and you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm like playing all this stuff," and I'm like, "I haven't done anything."
I was
Uh-huh.
like playing something before this to try to
I
have
was
relevant
I
things,
was
and then I was
literally
like,
about to boot up Goodbye Volcano High, a game that I genuinely do
that's
wanna
what I
play.
boot up.
Yes,
That's
I
very
yes,
funny.
know.
but I
I
started
want to
Yep.
running out
play
of
that.
time because I was
Same.
dropping files and, like, I was looking at
Mhm.
the clock, I'm like, "I played this
Yeah.
game for 20 minutes." Anyway, thank you for making it just demos.
Next episode is going to be like, I know this came out like a week ago, but I was at PAX. So yeah, let's talk about the demos that we really enjoyed. Janet, what do you got on your list?
Well, I do have Pepper Grinder, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
Devolver Digital published title. This is an action adventure game where you play as a character that has a little like either drill for a hand or they're holding a drill. I'm not really quite sure. And it is platformer esque, I would say. I mean, it's you jump, so I kind of consider it a platformer, but you are kind of burrowing down into like the sands with your drill to like collect gems or coins or what have you, and you sometimes use that to propel you like out of the earth into like the next slab that might be like hanging from the ceiling. So it's a big year for like going underground, I feel like, and like
Yeah.
digging and burrowing in games, both in the indie and the AAA space. And yeah, this just it has a good feeling. It's interesting, it's cool, you know, a little bit reminiscent of the little like mole mechanic in Yoshi's Island, but faster because you're like
Yeah.
swimming almost through the sand. Saw it and loved it when I saw it, played it and enjoyed it when I played it. So looking forward to that. I also hit up Time Flies over
Yeah.
by the Panic booth. This is I feel like we might have talked about this game at some point, but it is a quick hit checklist style game. Think Untitled Goosehead, think Henry Halfhead, which isn't out yet. Entitled Goose Game, not Goosehead. I feel like I
I
just
was not
mattered
gonna
this
I was not
mattered.
gonna correct you. I'm
I
like, I knew
just
what you
took it
meant.
that you were combining Halfhead, and I was like,
And
I'm with you. I
Untitled
Goose
Goose
Game,
understand.
yeah,
Moving
like
on. Yeah.
they're two sides of a very specific coin, but by that I mean like because if you haven't seen or played either of those games, you'll have like a quick checklist of objectives to do, and you sort of have to figure out how to accomplish those objectives because they're written in such a way that is a little lightly vague. So things like on time flies, and the shtick is that you're only alive for 70 seconds. You know, you have like the lifespan of
Right.
a fly. So with each kind of run you do, you're trying to do more things on the list, and it'll have something like, one is like live a full life or something, and it's just that you
Yeah.
just die like after the 70 seconds.
Or like
Um
learn to play an instrument.
exactly. And you
It's a
run
good
over
one.
the strings of the guitar. So yeah, that's the construction of the game. It's very minimalistic looking, like completely just like black and white, almost like
Yeah.
a like hand drawn. And it was cool. Like I enjoy games that have that style. So that's what I liked about it. That's what it delivered. I was like, yeah, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. For me, the two games that I put together besides Untitled Goose Game, which is a great pool, was Minute
Yes,
and
the two.
Mm,
Yep.
tabletop
nice.
game Tokaido, if you've ever played
Ooh.
that.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with the tabletop, but now I want to. Takedo?
It's
Can
good.
you
It's
can
you
you spell that out?
basically Tokaido. Tokaido? Sorry if I misspelled that. But the basic idea of the game is that you're on vacation on the Tokaido Road, and the only point of the game is to have the best vacation possible. So, like, time flies is you are just trying to have your best fly life, you know? So you're checking off all the things that you'd want to do in your little fly, 70 seconds worth of living, and it's a lot of fun and it's hard to put down even though you're like, "Okay, I'll try this for like 70 seconds and I'll get the idea and then I'll move on." But I did like 5 different runs of like, I just want to see what's up here. I just want to see like
Yeah.
I figured I could get that, but I didn't know how to do it, but then I hit the switch and then I died from old age and yeah, it's
Yeah.
surprisingly hard to put down.
Awesome. I didn't get a chance to check that one out, but it looked really cool.
Yeah. I have other ones, but I don't know if we want to do like
Yeah.
a back and forth, or should I
I
run through the
didn't know.
rest that I
Let's
have?
go ahead and move to Luke. What were your sort of top?
Sure. One that totally caught me by surprise. I had never heard of this game before. I played it at the Mix, but it was also playable on the show floor. Was Techno
Sure, sure.
Banter? The dev pitched this one to me as Papers, Please, but with sassy dialogue, and I was like, okay,
Mm.
Okay.
enough said. I'm gonna give it a go. So it has this really cool pixel art style. You play as a nightclub bouncer in this like fantasy esque world. All the characters in the world are like fantastical creatures or like anthropomorph anthropomorphic animals and things. And it's super funny. It's really cool. So as you're each night when you're acting as the bouncer for the nightclub, you have to suss out who gets into the club and who doesn't get in. You have to like observe character traits of each character, weed out the shady folks, don't let them into the club. And the game's just really clever. I was a little like weary of like, oh, is the writing gonna work? But by the end of the demo, I thought it was a lot of fun. I was laughing throughout. And it felt like a pretty original concept that I hadn't seen before, so that was one that I really enjoyed.
I'm
Um,
looking at a picture of it, and
yeah,
it has a great art style. How
yeah.
did you run into this man panda who's in his underwear? And did he seem
I didn't see a
suspicious?
panda in his underwear. But what was funny about it is like each person had their own like energy. Like there was like this default like angry bro dude, and it's like, oh fuck off, you're not getting into the club. Reject. But then he got like angry with me and forced his way into the club, and that like disrupted the dynamic of the club. So there was like kind of these like systems happening of like your choices seem to matter and then impacted you. Your boss is this like hilarious frog woman who calls you laddie.
Mhm.
Very charming, weird, different game. So had a blast with that one.
I love it.
um Another one I want to throw out, I played a game called Fraymakers. This is currently available in early access on Steam, but it is straight up Smash Bros with indie characters. But I feel like unlike
Mm.
every Smash Bros clone I've ever played, this one on a technical level plays and runs incredibly well. The lead developer on the game, his first name was Max. I'm blanking on his last name at the moment, but super nice dude. He was really heavily involved in like browser based fighting game development over 10 years ago, and like the Smash community and the mod community there. And so this was kind of a manifestation of that. But he's collaborating with tons of different indie developers. There's going to be 500 assist trophies in the game. The playable
Wow.
roster includes crazy indie favorites like Octodad. Chicory is an assist trophy
Oh,
you
hell
can
yeah.
get. Just like really cool stuff like that. I was like pitching him on different indie game favorites that he was then going to go like chat with and see if people are interested in being a part of this game. It's just this like really cool melding pot of like celebrating indie culture, but like at the base level, the game was so fun to play. The four of us that got up to our demo station all picked Octodad as our playable character, and so we're running around this stage all as Octodad. It's hilarious, but yeah, that game was a blast. So highly recommend folks check it out. It's available on Steam. It's $20 early access right now. Totally worth it if you're looking for a party game or you enjoy Smash, but you're kind of tired of, you want something different. Like this is really a cool game.
I love it. I'm looking at one of the screenshots, and it's um Among Us crewmate slash
Yep.
imposter,
Hmm.
like just destroying a couple of people. I love that so much.
It's so
I didn't get a
cool.
chance to play this, and now I'm
Yeah, it
sad
was
it's
really,
on
really
there.
fun.
For me, I want to shout out something that me and Luke both have on our lists because it was one of the bigger surprises of the show for me. Clam Man 2. And I believe there's a subtitle.
It's the
It's not
headliner, I
the
believe.
headliner. Yes.
Clam
Um,
Man. What a game.
Clam Man.
Tell
So
us
good.
about
It
Clam Man, Jill.
is. You are a clam who is a man. Imagine, if you
And the
will.
podcast. No, I'm
Yep.
kidding. Go ahead.
It has a lot of like office space, the office sort of
Oh, hell
vibes to
yeah.
it. You are a clam who's sitting at your desk. You start out and like it's a really heavy RPG too. So when I got the spiel from the developer Martin, I don't remember his last name. He said that so many people who played this liken it to Disco Elysium. And I can
Mm.
kind of see just from how his UI is set up that there are a lot of comparisons to that. But he said the funniest thing, and it's going to be stuck in my head. Apparently, people have started to dub it Fishco Elysium
Oh
because
my
it's a
god.
clam. I'm like, that's perfect. So you are sitting at your desk. Obviously, you hate your job. It's a kind of cubicle jungle that you live in, and you get a message from your boss, who is also just like your friend, who's your fine messing around with, who's like, obviously something very important is happening, very serious business stuff, come to my office, which you take to mean that nothing serious is happening and you're gonna go goof around with your friend. And as you kind of walk up the cubicle, you see all of these different people and you can choose to interact with them or not. And I didn't get a chance to go around the whole floor, but I wish I did. But the person next to me, I got into what they were doing a little bit, and they're like looking around suspiciously, like they have their cubicle like tented and like hidden from view, and they're like, "Psst, come over here." And like I ended up helping this person, I think, make a bomb and like plant it under his desk and like dig, but everything is role based. So in order to convince him that I wasn't part of like the authorities that might be coming after him, I had to make a roll. Um and in the very beginning you get to choose like your class, and it's things like stupidly confident. So you are totally like high in social abilities but low in intelligence, but you don't know that, so you're just confident. Or anxious, where your character is like neurotic but you're really smart and you can think your way through things, and compassionate for other people. And so your skills kind of get involved, and I managed to convince him I was not part of any like authority figure. But I wasn't able to make the bomb, but I was able to convince him that I did make the bomb correctly, and then scooted off to the CEO's office before anything could happen. And it's just really well done dialogue. It made me chuckle throughout. Like, it is so. I used to work in an office, so it is really very like relatable in that way. And eventually you and your friend the CEO discover that there is a club, a comedy club opening underneath your building, which is hilarious because the guy owns the building. Your friend, who's the CEO, owns the building. It's his business. And they just completely like steamroll him into believing that because it's underground, he doesn't own that part. And he's just kind of like, okay, I guess you guys can open a comedy club. So it's just a fun, interactive, like you're going to go through. I didn't get to see this in the demo, but you're going to go through the rest of the game, sort of coming up with your comedy club routine and like remembering jokes and trying to make that work. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. What did you think about it, Luke?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I was just really impressed by the writing. I thought the game was genuinely very, very funny. And it's interesting hearing you kind of retell how the events played out for you, because I went to talk to that same crab character that wanted to build the bomb, but I rolled too low of a dice roll. And so we couldn't build the bomb. So then I had to like, in order to prevent him from building a bomb, take the bomb parts, hide them, throw them on the roof, and then lie to him that I built the bomb. So just like all these like weird side happenings. But yeah, it's incredibly fun. All the characters are like different sea creatures. So there's like this cool shark guy who runs the comedy club, and they need your help advertising the comedy club because for some reason no one knows about this secret comedy club in the basement of the office space building. But yeah, it
Hmm.
was really wacky and weird, but I had a blast with it, and so it's definitely on my radar. And I want to go back at some point and play Clam Man 1 because I had
Yeah,
no idea this series existed, but it's pretty clever and definitely worth keeping an eye on.
100%. I think the other
Apparently
thing
the
that I was.
real
Oh,
quick, the
go ahead.
prologue is free of it. I was looking it up on
Yep.
Steam.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's
Yeah,
Clamman
the
2 open
prologue
mic,
is,
and that's the
yeah,
prologue
open
for
mic.
headliner.
And he told me that the developer told me that as soon as he's done with PAX, he is going to revamp that demo. So some of the feedback he got during the show will be reflected in that demo. So hopefully that gets put up very quickly because I would like to try some other things out and talk to other people. The other one that I'm very excited about that wasn't really on my radar until I went is Mirthwood, and this is repped by one Mike Towndra. So he's not here, so I can talk about him and how well he did. He was so good at running that booth. It is a kind of, when you think of RPG, is sort of a much more kind of typical fantasy RPG. It's got a hand-drawn art style. I think people were saying a mixture of like Fable and Stardew, I think was the
Yeah.
other one a lot of people were shouting out. And it is just to like, you get plopped into a world. You have this epic opening with like, here's the history of what's happening in the world, and you get plopped down into a map and you're trying to get to the city, but between there you just run into like, oh no, this person has been killed by bandits. What's this note say? Oh, you left a sword over there, so now I have to go over there and play with that. And you're getting equipment and you're getting like stats up as you're using your uh abilities, and it is one of those games that I'm going to be so into. I'm going to be playing forever. I'm not going to be able to put down. So 100% loved this. Janet, did you get a chance to check this out? I think you did.
No, I didn't. It was I was a victim of the dual buildings because I really was like for the culture just because like like Mike's there. I was like, oh, at least check it out. Like, sure, yeah. And then I became a liar and I like felt it happening in real time because I'm like, I'm not gonna go back to that other building. Like, I
Yeah,
just wasn't able to
I
check it
can't
out.
get,
So
I cannot like push my body that far.
yeah, because I'm like, well, the thing is, it's not even that, but like, I didn't have that much time outside of like my work assignment, so I was like already in the other building, and I'm like, if I go over there, like that's gonna be it, like, because I'm not gonna be going back and forth. So it's like, I'm like, let me just get more out of the building that I'm in than
Yeah.
going over to Mike's building, which has a name that isn't Mike's building, but so we'll see if I can get to it.
It's all of Mike's building. We're gonna write in
Yeah.
and tell them that that's what we have to do. But if you please go check that out because it's such a fantastic game. Just to shout out a couple of other things that I saw and I'm going to be writing about. Quadroids,
Oh, me
really
too.
really cool puzzle game where you are there. It is 4 different areas and your character goes from one area to the other, but whenever they switch, the button you use to control them changes. And they use
Ooh.
this in a bunch of different ways, and you have to be like jumping over traps and avoiding monsters and like having to remember as you like you're jumping, wall jumping, okay? And then you get up to the next quadrant and all of a sudden the button you need to be hitting to jump up a wall changes, and it took me, I don't know why it took me like 5 times to remember like, oh, I have to instead of hitting like right trigger, I have to hit like left bumper now, and it's just really cool and fun and a very unique take on the puzzle. I want to shout out Wonderful, which is a sort of like um survival game where you only have a certain like amount of time. It's like 30 seconds or something, and you can continue to explore as long as you're finding uh light for your lantern, like
Hmm.
fire. um but also when you find a light you get the choice of 1 or 2 buildings, and when you build that building, more of the landscape opens up so that you can get to the next lamplight. So you're constantly like planning out where to put stuff so that you can get to a fire instead of it being like inaccessible because of it's beyond water or it's hidden in a big bush or something.
Oh yeah,
Um
I tried playing this. I was at a different show. I was like kind of bad at it. Is the thing. Like I think just like how it like lays out. It's like it kind of reminds me in that sense of like they're totally different mechanics, but like mini Metro kind. It's just the idea of like
Mm.
kind of like a planning, like the puzzle, or like maybe Terranil in the more slightly more modern era came out like this like
yeah.
last year or whatever. But yeah, the art's very cute on it.
Yeah,
For sure.
very, very cool. And then, oh, so many things. Everdeep Aurora is another one of these like drilling games that I didn't know about until I got here, and it's cute. And you're a cat with a cape. I love it. Uh,
Sold.
I Dungeons of Hinterberg, I have my thoughts up on the website. I love this game. I loved it when it got revealed. This is the first hands-on that they have had for the game, so go and check that out. And uh, so many other things I have on this list that I'm looking at. I'm like, everyone's just gonna have to check out the website because there were a lot of great games. Um, Janet, what do you have on your list that you want to shout out?
Yeah, double shout to the Quadroids. Talking to the person that was repping the game, they mentioned like, yeah, it's Lemmings, which also I've not played Lemmings ever, and I really need to because I've played every game that's like Lemmings, but not actual
Uh-huh.
Lemmings. So, time to fill that gap so I can understand exactly what they mean. But yeah, same deal. I thought it was just very unique, very fun. Also too, it's worth shouting out that it tells you the button input like on the quadrant, so it's not like you have to memorize it, but it is still very challenging, and I liked it a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Um, Other things, and these things are kind of like at the mix, and maybe there's some crossover, but I don't, know for sure, right? Kind of thing. Which is if you're not familiar or forgot, like didn't listen to the other episodes, the mix is like a indie game space that often happens alongside bigger events. So maybe like at E3, they'd be like, oh, there's also the mix on Friday, and like this was kind of that thing. Like there was Friday PAX, and then there was like the mix on Friday.
Yeah.
So things that stood out from there. Yellow Taxi goes room. This also I put this
Mhm.
down because we have like the topic of the show notes and there's like guiding questions for it. And one of them was like, what was the funkiest or the weirdest game you played? Mine was Yellow Taxi Goes Room. It is the pitch that I heard of it is it's like Crazy Taxi if it was like a platformer. I don't really know. People mentioned Crazy Taxi and there's Crazy Taxi DNA in it, but it is like Crazy Taxi if it was Sonic.
Yeah.
And also maybe something else is in there with a little bit of like Wario goofiness and humor. It's funky, it's chaotic, it's arcadey, it's strange. It's compelling though. I like it.
Yeah.
It's very the rumble also, I mean they said you can adjust it, but the rumble goes hard. Like it reminds me of like remember when Switch came out and they like cranked the HD rumble like
I
really hard. Like Snake
mhm.
Pass was like it was like a phone from like when phones first came out, you had a phone in your desk in 8th grade and it's like like it's a lot. But I think it kind of fits the like funky, chaotic Chuck E. Cheese meets Green Hills meets Bomb Fields. Like there's some wild stuff and a lot of also I think game references, like very direct like Mario references. It's a weird, funky group of things slapped together in a way that it was frankly really fun. So I want to shout that out as like a very odd thing that I really enjoyed. There was also Valley Peaks, which I didn't go hands on
Yeah.
with this because I had done a podcast on the demo like a million years ago, like 3 years ago or something. I like went digging for it. And Valley Peaks is cool because, and granted, I haven't touched it in a long time, but it's a climbing game, and the climbing is a little bit leaning in on wonky physics, but not so wonky that's unwieldy. But tonally, it has a lot of things that remind me of a short hike, just in terms of like you're walking around a space and you're meeting these quirky characters who sort of may have insights or activities to kind of give you, and the art is very compelling. And there's like frog people, and it's like kind of one of those games, and I love those kind of games. So
Mhm.
glad to see that Valley Peaks is still trucking along and making its way towards its final build. Similarly, I want to shout out Lucid. This is a game I went a full appointment hands on with on at like East or something, and I saw it again. Lucid is a like Celeste like platformer in terms of it's a difficult platformer. It has a lot going on in terms of what it's asking you to do. But if you're someone that likes hard platformers, you will figure it out fairly quickly and be super into it because of the way it is very, at times, pat your head, rub your belly. But again, if you're into hard platformers, you'll like get a sense. I do vaguely remember them talking about trying to add in sliders in terms of like the difficulty thing. Like, I don't think they're going to end up going full in on only people that are like really skilled can play it, but don't super quote me on that because I'm not sure where they landed on that. I believe they're like gonna be like work. I don't know when the next news drop is gonna be like dropping for it, but they're kind of making more progress and they're almost approaching release ish, right? And yeah, super cool game. And the little main character has like a fluffy coat, which is like nice from like a visibility standpoint, but also just like some cool design. So
Yeah.
shout out to that. And then one that was kind of a mixed bag for me, but I want to shout out because like the art and the vibes are really compelling, even though I don't know where that's landing for me, is this game called Roman Sands RE Build.
Yeah.
This is a visual novel that is sort of funky, psychedelic 2000s vaporwave-ish with the aesthetic. Kind of reminded me a bit of Paradise Killer, just in terms of like the visual vibes. And I really liked the quest that I was given for it and the general like setup of the game. The number one thing that kind of held me back from being like super glowing on it is just I think kind of like the movement speed mixed with I think some of the UI stuff. While it looks super cool, it's a little heavy on the eyes, and I'm kind of hoping
Yeah.
that maybe for the full release they have like a toggle off animation for the menus. Because while it looks really cool, I'm like sort of staring into static after a while. Kind of pulls me back out of it a bit, but it had some really like cool ideas going for it. So that one was at least interesting to me and maybe worth taking a glance at if you like that style of game.
Nice. Sounds cool.
100%. Luke, what do you have for your shout outs?
I have a couple quick ones. I played Thank Goodness You're Here, which is the new game from Cole Supper, the devs behind Untitled Goose Game. Super
Mm.
cool game. Kind of meets like Untitled Goose Game with a little bit of like WarioWare energy. The art style is
Yeah.
very like Cartoon Network, crazy, weird, different. You are in this little English town and you're just doing different little errands and deeds for different people, but things get really wacky. And at one point you're trying to help a pie maker and you turn into a ham and jump in an oven, and like you're running around just doing all these like wacky wild things as if you're like in a Cartoon Network cartoon. The writing was very fun and I had a blast with it, so definitely shout out that one.
One of the funniest things
Yeah.
about playing that game was that I played it and like the accents are very distinctive.
Mm-hmm.
It is based talking to the developer, he said it is based on the space where he lives. And then having heard all the voices in the game and then listening to him talk, I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
was.
Yep.
I hear it. You are the exact same intonation as all of the characters. I love it so much.
Yeah, so
Go
that was
ahead,
a
Luke.
blast. No, that's great. Yeah, the devs were also super nice too, and just really great to chat with. I mentioned another Crab's Treasure at the top of the show, but just want to shout
Yep.
that one out again. Ton of
Big fans of
fun.
Aggro Crab.
Yeah, for those that I dabble in Souls games, but struggle with Souls games. This felt like a nice balance to me of like I love the visuals. It's very colorful, very fun, but has a challenge, has some level of depth to it, and the combat was really satisfying once I got the hang of the dodge, and definitely am excited to play more of that one. And then one more that I played at the mix that I was not expecting and caught me off guard. Knight versus Giant, the Broken Excalibur. This is a really cool top-down action roguelike game. Has a really beautiful hand-painted art style. Visually looks really similar to Bastion from Supergiant. But really fun combat. You're fighting like mushrooms and giants and crazy enemies, and it was fun because two of my friends that were with me, they played the demo right before me, but we watched each other play, and we each picked different builds. We different strategies when approaching the boss, and it was really fun to see the kind of variety of different play styles, and the combat was just such a blast. That was one that like I was thinking about all weekend, and if I had it on my Switch or Steam Deck, I would have made time to keep playing because I just couldn't stop thinking about how fun that demo was.
100%. There you have it, everybody. Those were our thoughts on PAX and what we are excited to play. That's the end of this week's council, though. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you to everyone who is joining us, Janet and Luke. Thank you so much. It was very last minute having you on, and I'm so glad that you were able to join us. Where can people check out your podcast?
For sure. And again, thank you so much for having me. I've looked up to both of your work for a long time and have so
Oh,
much
thank you.
respect for everything you do. So it was a blast to chat
That's
with
very
y'all.
kind.
So
You're
really
part of the
appreciate
council
it.
now.
Heck
Yeah.
yeah.
We have to
But
like
if
create badges or something. Sorry,
Oh,
I
yeah.
interrupted your part. By
no,
the
you're
way.
totally fine. I'll take
They'll
a
be
badge.
in a
I
letter
would
with
I'd wear it proudly. Yeah. But if folks
like
want to hear
with
more
a
of
hand.
yeah, if folks want to hear more of my video game banter and content, you can check out the Lukewarm Games podcast as well as Crossplay Conversations. They're both bi-weekly, but they release alternatingly, so you can
Right.
hear me every week somewhere. And then you can also find all of my writing and PAX coverage at lukewarmgames.com. But thanks again. This was a blast.
I'm glad to have you. We'll be able to put that in the description below for anybody who wants to find it. For us, the Indie Council is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Perhaps it's been approved by Google. It's hard to know at this point. Jenny and Mike being the ones who are really pushing that podcast audio only kind of platforms. So we'll see you the next time they are on. But this session is closed. Go play some indies.